Hello, and welcome back to Relocurious. I'm Michal.
And I'm Kathy.
Today we're talking with someone for whom relocating became profoundly transformative. Our guest Tracy left home at 16, moved across Asia, and then across the world to Vancouver, and more recently to New York. Each move involved hope, heartbreak, and deep insights.
Tracy names something that many of us experience but rarely acknowledge. Moving doesn't fix what hurts. On the contrary, it often magnifies it. Thankfully, that realization can become the beginning of a journey towards healing, clarity, and what Tracy beautifully calls coming home to yourself.
This conversation offers a lot of food for thought. First, there's the disappointment and unmet expectations that we may experience at some point during our move. Then there's the intention to fit in and truly belong. And finally, Tracy invites us to pay attention to what our body is telling us about what we are experiencing. This noticing or somatic awareness can help us figure out whether a place or a moment in time is right for us.
If you've ever wondered why a move felt harder than you expected, or why even when you've done all the right things, you still don't quite feel like you belong, listen in. This episode is an invitation to discover something new about yourself and your journey through life. Hello, Tracy. We are delighted to have you with us today.
Hi, Kathy and Michael. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm glad to be here.
In many ways, you have a story that's quite similar to many of our guests. You've had a number of international moves. Those moves have helped you become who you are today. One thing that is a little bit new for us on the podcast is those moves and that personal growth has evolved into you helping other people settle into their moves. And so, where did your story begin? What began this journey for you?
Yeah, of course. So I left home at 16 years old. I was originally from a small town in Northeast China called Fushan, and I left there for high school in 2003 first. And then I moved to Hong Kong for my master degree. And when I got to Hong Kong, I really loved the city. I thought I would just spend the rest of my life there. I never thought I would leave until I was 29 years old. That year, I was going through major life transitions, including financial losses, a divorce, and death of a family member. So in the middle of that transition, I just came up with this idea. I want to move abroad. I thought moving abroad could give me a new start. And then I was wondering where I should go. And I just had a conversation with one of my friends, and he said, maybe you could try Canada because you don't even need a visa. You are qualified for their permanent residency program. And then I started doing some research and I just applied and got the PR very smoothly. And so at that time, I had so much hope. I thought moving abroad could give me this new start. But after arriving in Vancouver, the reality hit really hard. It wasn't what I imagined. And that's also where I began this healing journey when I realized that relocation cannot fix an inner problem. It only magnifies it. Without the old distractions, I had no choice but to face them. So that's how I started this healing journey. Initially, I did a lot of healing in myself. And until one day I met a friend and she talked to me, she said, wow, you sound like my therapist. And that's when this idea of becoming a healer and therapist come to my mind. And so I started training first as a life coach. And today I also work as a somatic practitioner, helping people create that felt sense of home in their body so that they can feel at peace no matter where life is taking them.
What a lovely way to take the emotional ups and downs of leaving the familiar, arriving somewhere new, where I think we all have expectations of what somewhere, what a new place is going to be for us. And, you mentioned the idea of the fresh start, but you're absolutely right that when you arrive there, well, there you are. And, you've left behind many of the supports and the network that has been helping you in the past. Those issues look different when you're there by yourself in a new environment. I wonder for many people that arriving in a new place is an excitement and rerouting and learning the place and taking steps to make that place home. But what happens when instead you're confronted with all the troubles that you thought you were leaving behind?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I always say like one of the emotions that I struggle with the most is disappointment in my journey of moving abroad. Because before you move abroad, you would have a vision for what this new chapter could look like. And then when you arrive there, the reality may not be the same as what you envisioned. So that can feel really disappointing and heartbreaking. So I feel that the first thing is really to acknowledge that, allowing yourself to feel the disappointment, because usually underneath that there is also grief. When we talk about grief and we think it's something we lost, but sometimes it's also tied to a dream that never came true. So that is the grief for unmet expectations. So when you begin to bring some names to these emotions, it really allows us to process those feelings and then eventually those feelings will begin to soften, and then we will have a better idea about what's next. Because so often when we feel those emotions such as disappointment, grief, regret, we tend to make impulsive decisions. Like in my experience, when I arrived in Vancouver, I realized this is not what I thought. I immediately want to came up with another solution, whether I should go back to Hong Kong or should I move to a new country. So for a long time, I was struggling with decision making. Where should I go? Where should I go next? Until later on, until I was really being present with those emotions, and then I can release them so that I can come back to a place where I have clarity on what's right for me, what's true for me. So that's really important for me. So first processing the emotions and then make your decisions.
So if a person has arrived in a place and it's not what they've expected, they know something's not right. It's not what they had hoped for. What are some first steps? What are some first questions they can ask themselves to understand whether it's the place, whether it's their expectations? Because that's not the first place we go when something doesn't meet our expectations. We sometimes look at what's wrong with this place as opposed to looking at ourselves. What are some questions a person could ask to understand what they're feeling, what they're experiencing more deeply?
Yeah, definitely there's so many layers when it comes to this. It could be this place is really not right for you. That's one reason. And then the second reason is could be your expectations. Could be there is something internal we need to move through so that we can really decide if this place is right or wrong. And then sometimes there is also a third layer, is timing, right? Because sometimes this place is right for you at this time. It may not be right for you after 5 years, 10 years. So I feel there are three things that are in play. We want to decide whether this is the right timing. And then the second, is this the right place? And then the third thing is, are you ready for this move? Right. So these are the three questions I would invite people to ask themselves.
I love that. We're seeing, things are changing around the world right now, and there's political shifts and there's conflict and there's a lot of people moving resulting from those things. And for Mikhail and I, we had planned our move in advance. We knew what we wanted. We knew where we were going. We were anticipating, like positively anticipating the move. And so it was quite a positive experience for us. But for someone who it maybe feels like they're being pressed to move or they're moving away from something that, was home and now it's changed and they're feeling a bit disconnected or lost and they're not moving towards, they're not positively anticipating a move. How can they better prepare themselves psychologically or emotionally for a gentle landing in their new home in those conditions?
Yeah, so in my work, I actually study there are five types of relocations, right? So the first type is people moving for a better career, for maybe for better education. And then second move is they're moving for their family, their partners could be finding a new job in a new city. They're moving to reunite with their loved ones. And the third one is they're moving for a better lifestyle. Maybe it's better climate. They want a slow pace. And the fourth type, I think, is what you were just talking about, is those unexpected moves. They were triggered by a crisis. Maybe it's a financial loss, natural disasters, political unrest, and maybe sometimes it's a divorce. So those moves feel pretty reactive and passive. Oftentimes we feel more overwhelmed, stressed, anxious when we are going through those moves that were unplanned. So it's really important to give yourself the compassion, acknowledge that. Because when we are going through a difficult time, there is this part of us that's always try to toughen up. But we may hear people say to you, like, stay strong. You have to be independent after moving to this new country because no one there really know you. You have to rely on yourself. That's why we always try to hold it together. And that just adds even more stress to our system. So it's really important offering yourself the compassion, the love you really need, because so often we think our power comes from resilience, strength, achievements. But in my experience, the greatest power we have is through the portal of love and softness. The more soft we can be with ourselves, the more solid we can become. And sometimes this can look like just maybe doing a morning checking uh, every day when you wake up, just scanning your body from the top of your head all the way down, and just be present with any sensation, any emotions you're feeling, not trying to fix them. Just be present with them and meet yourself with compassion, with love. And even 20 minutes check-in can make a big difference. Because again, when we give ourselves permission to feel through those emotions, and then we begin to operate from a different frequency. And because I believe the external world is just a mirror of our internal state. When we really tend to our inner world, allow ourselves to feel through those stress, those anxiety that came up as we're moving to a new place, we'll begin to soften. And then you'll eventually begin to see how that's reflect back to you in your external surroundings.
Oh, that's so wise. I like that. You mentioned as you were describing the different types of moves, moves, the unplanned moves, and you mentioned, divorce or the loss of a job, those sorts of things. I'd offer another type of move, if I may. And this was my experience as well. We had a planned move and it was exciting. We were anticipating it. And in addition to the move, I left a full-time job and I became semi-retired, which is a real identity shift outside of the move. Retirement is a major identity shift for many people that they struggle with even without the move. We've spoken to other people who have moved to pursue a relationship or to leave a relationship, or they've moved to pursue studies. They've gone from being a high school student to being a university student. Like all of these are large life changes and the move. So that's a lot of change. And how do you have any advice for how to reflect on and think about the emotions from the move and from the identity change of your new circumstance in the context of your new home? There's a lot going on there, and it's confusing to tease out in my experience.
Yeah, this is also an experience I lived through when I moved from Hong Kong to Vancouver. I had to shed a lot of those old identities that no longer served me, because when I live in Asia, I always feel like in order to have a good life, I need to have a good college degree, landing a high-paying corporate job, getting married before 30 years old. That's what it means to have a good life, until I was going through those transitions. And when arrived in Vancouver, I had to rebuild, restart. At that time, I didn't even know who I am anymore. I didn't know what I truly want. And so there are 4 years I was living in this in-between space. So this is a space I think a lot of people went through after moving abroad, where you feel you're no longer connected to the place you came from, but you also haven't found that true sense of belonging in this new place. You're just trying to figure out what's the next step. Who do you want to be? What do you really want to do? And for some people, it lasts for a few months. For some people, it lasts for a few years. And I also met clients who are still in that space even after decades moving abroad. And so what I call this is a pause we need, and this is called sacred pause from Carl Jung. This is the sacred pause, the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Oftentimes, when we're in this space, we feel we're lost, we're empty, we're stuck. But this space isn't empty. It's actually the sacred pause, the necessary pause for the necessary silence for your soul to speak its truth. Because the universe has a very different timing than our own timing. Because part of us always will try to figure out, what do I want to do in 5 years, 10 years? We have our timing, but the universe timing is very different. So this is the space we need to develop trust, develop faith, allowing the universe to work its magic versus what we're trying to do here. We just want to slow down. We want to be patient with ourselves and then really take the time and space to do those self-reflections to figure out what your soul is speaking to you. That's my experience.
That is powerful. And it makes me think when you first arrive in a new place, this is my experience again, you want to do all the things. You want to learn the new city. You're busy figuring out how to get your healthcare card and your internet and all the things. And you've got a language to learn and you want to, get connected with local groups and make friends. And you're describing this beautiful sacred pause. And it feels like that first time, those first months when you arrive somewhere, first years even really, they don't feel like a pause. They feel like a bit of a scramble, honestly. And so, how do you make the space for that pause and still do all the things that will lead you to be a good citizen and connect to your new community?
I definitely understand that, especially after moving to a new place, we have to build everything from scratch. So there's a lot of stress and anxiety, sometimes feeling overwhelmed because it even take time to find a doctor that you can trust in your new neighborhood. Like all those small tasks feels exhausting. And so I think this requires a mindset shift because so often we think we need to get the things done in order to relax. We must figure out the external solutions first so that we can feel better on the inside. But the reality is when you focus on yourself, focus on your inner world, and you actually become much more productive when you show up in your external reality. Because there is a quote from Peter Levine, I think he said, if you want to go faster, go slow. So sometimes the time you use on taking a rest, just recharging yourself, is actually going to help you become more productive. Because people always say, I don't have time for this. But if you spend 20 minutes intentionally on a day-to-day basis, just focusing on yourself, connecting to your emotions, and then when you show up in the external world, you become much more alive, much more productive, much more energized. And that's going to help you find the external solutions, whether it's a visa problem, housing problem, a job problem, much easier and much more efficient.
That sounds great. Often Mikhail and I talk about relocation as a little bit of an arc. So, it starts with the dream of moving, and then it moves into the decision and letting go of your life where you were and leaping off into a new beginning. Where you begin to find roots in your new home, and eventually you come to a place of belonging. And you touched on it earlier that for some people they've passed through that in-between space and they really feel like they belong. And for others, it's a struggle or it may not come. What advice do you have for people who are really seeking that belonging in their new place?
Yeah, I love that question. So when it comes to belonging, I think there are two types of belonging. We have the external belonging, which means we want to find like-minded people, the communities where we feel we are part of something bigger than us, where we can participate in these activities, connect with others who inspired us, and build those meaningful connections. So that is the external belonging. And then we also have the inner belonging. This means you feel safe to be yourself, to show up as your authentic self, to express your truth. And a lot of this requires a sense of safety. And this is exactly the work we do with my clients. We want to help people establish a sense of safety in their body. And the safety is not just physical safety, it's also emotional safety. You feeling safe to open up, to share your emotional truth with other people. And then there is also the relational safety, right? Because I don't think it's realistic that you can be friends with everyone, but all you need is to find your people, because I believe one rich, meaningful relationship is better than 100 casual connections. So we want to focus on building those deep, meaningful connections, and that requires relational safety. You need to be able to discern who you can trust and who you cannot. So these are the internal work we do. We help our clients to create a sense of safety. And then when they show up in their external world, they will be able to discern, is this really the right group for me? Is this the right people for me? And if they're right, what are some things I can do to establish that meaningful connections? Because really this is about, I think, if you want to find your people or find your community and connect them to on a deeper level, I think you need to become one of these two things. The first thing is you want to become a pain detective, right? So this means you understand people's struggles. And if we look deeper, it doesn't matter which cultural background we have, our gender, our races, our age, it doesn't matter those differences. We all share the same struggles. We all, at one point or the other, we all have maybe some relationship issues, a breakup, or maybe we're going through a career transition, we're experiencing some financial stability, and we want to show up for people when they're going through a difficult time. That helps build a connection. And then the other thing we want to be is we want to become a dream amplifier. This means show up for people and help them accomplish their goals. And again, this doesn't matter which culture we come from, we share very similar goals and dreams. All of us want more connection. We want to connect to people on a deeper level. We want better relationship. We want more financial freedom so that we can have peace, have time, have energy to do the things that bring us joy. So really, when you're trying to build that external belonging, I would invite people to do one of these two things, understand what people struggle with and what they want to accomplish, and start a deeper conversation. Start asking people these questions, and then you will realize that we are not that different. Even though we may look different, we have different skin color, we have different age, different gender, but underneath that, there is something that's universal that connects all of us.
I love that. A dream amplifier and a pain detective. I love that perspective. I have another question about belonging, and it's come up a few times in conversations with guests. And one is that there's a perspective that there's this list of things that you can do to essentially earn belonging. You know, you can spend the time, you can meet local people, understand local concerns, you can learn the language, you have done the things, you belong. There's another perspective that you can do all those things, but the community has to accept you. Like belonging is something that is given to you, not something that you achieve or earn or take. What I'm hearing from you is that, you know, belonging is much more personal and relational between people that individual people that you meet, and it's not so much a belonging within the broader community or even culture. Have I understood that, or is there more subtlety to it?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because there are so many nuances, especially the word belonging can have so many different meanings. But for me, I always categorize this in two things. I feel there is a false sense of belonging and there is a true sense of belonging. So the false sense of belonging means you have to erase yourself to fit into a group or a culture, or sometimes it could be a religion. You have to follow what other people are doing in order for you to be accepted, to be validated. And oftentimes in this space, even on the surface, it looks like we are part of a group, but deep down we feel emotionally exhausted. So the question you need to ask yourself is, how do you feel when you are being part of a group? Do you feel like you can be yourself, or do you feel like you have to erase yourself to fit in? If you feel like you can be your authentic self, then that is belonging. If you feel like you have to fit in, then that is just a false sense of belonging. Because true belonging means you get to show up as your authentic self. You get to be you. You get to express your truth. And when you express your truth, you're being also received by the other people. They are on the same page. They see you, they understand you, they accept you for who you are. And that could be also that could in terms of the external forms, it could still show up as a group. Like in my experience, when I arrived in Vancouver, I find my belonging in a spiritual meetup group, and where I met some of my best friends. We share the same passion for spirituality, psychology. I feel that true sense of belonging within that group. But versus in many other situations, I was trying to fit in, I was trying to become a part of social gathering, could be a party, but I always feel like at not feeling at ease because I feel like I had to hide parts of myself in order to pretend I'm same as other people. So this question is asked a really important question we need to ask yourself, like how do you really feel when you are part of a group?
That's so important because when you move to a new place, there's a pressure almost to, find friends, to recreate your social circle. And, it's not hard at all to meet people. There's 100 ways to do that. But to find people that you can have a conversation that matters, that energizes you, that where you feel connected with that person, that's more rare. And it doesn't happen right away.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, I think the social norms is always like you start with some small talks. You talk about the weather, talk about the food, things don't really matter so that you can protect yourself. You won't upset anyone. But versus, I think true belonging requires you to take a leap of faith to really show up as your authentic self and to initiate a conversation. I always invite people to do this. You don't have to do this with everyone, but just pick 2 or 3 people on your contact list, someone you think you can trust and share something you never shared before. Share them what your struggle is, what your dream is, and what keeps you up at night. And once you begin to initiate a conversation like that, you will be amazed at how people can relate to that. And that's how deep, meaningful connections is built.
What I'm hearing is you need to be vulnerable. And often when people are in a new environment and everything is unfamiliar, that's already quite vulnerable. And so how do you inspire people to take that extra step of being even more vulnerable to have those conversations when they're maybe, they're not sure where they stand already just as a new resident in a place?
Yeah, so vulnerability definitely takes time. It requires us to have a basic sense of safety to do that. And this is not just like the mindset work as in saying to myself, you're safe, you're safe. This is a felt sense in the body. This is why I feel somatic healing is so powerful, really help us create that felt sense of safety in your body. And so that when you show up in a conversation, in a social network, you feel safe to initiate a conversation or you feel safe to connect with different people at different levels. And so that also starts with yourself. I would still encourage people to reconnect with yourself, with themselves, to reconnect to their truth. And then from that place, you'll be able to discern, is this really the right situation for me to open up, to be vulnerable? Like I said, a lot of this is about discernment, discern who you can trust and who you cannot. And you don't have to open up, be vulnerable with everyone. You just need that one person. And being able to discern who is that one person is the first step.
That's probably good advice for anyone, whether they've moved or not. I'm wondering, one of the questions we often ask our guests is, how has your journey of relocation changed you personally? I think you've touched on many of the ideas and beliefs and practices that you've embraced, but if you had to summarize how it's changed you from maybe that first move to Hong Kong or maybe the one to Vancouver. How is that? Who were you then and who are you now?
Yeah, I love that question. So I think what this changed most for me is my definition of home has changed a lot. Because as a child, I always have this attachment to my original home. I want to be with my parents, be with my grandparents. I thought that's what home means to me, just being with your loved ones. And then when I left home at 16, I realized I had to build my new home now. And that at that time, I thought that looks like maybe having a house one day and getting a stable job, getting married, and with my kids, establish a new family. And until I decided to leave Hong Kong and move to Vancouver, being in this new environment, I feel that I have to redefine home again. And at that time, I was just being exposed to new ways of living, a lot of new ideas, and also meet people from different culture background. And that's when I realized I want to find people who are like-minded, who share similar values, beliefs. It doesn't matter we have different cultural background. What really matters is we have a heart-to-heart conversation. We share similar opinions on so many different things. So that's how I feel like home to me at that time, being with people who really understand me, accept me. But then nowadays I moved 2 more times after living in Vancouver. I'm in New York now, and I feel a lot of times nowadays I feel home is inner state of peace and connection. Sometimes it doesn't have to be attached to an external place or a house or even a relationship. It's this inner state we experience inside our body, the feeling of love, the feeling of connection, the feeling of peace. And so this is what happens when we begin to connect with ourselves at a deeper level. And that's what give me a true sense of power, because in the past I always felt like I need to move to this place to meet this person in order to feel at home. But nowadays I feel like I have the ability to do that for myself. I can create that sense of home for myself. And then we just let the external things unfold. I feel this is how life becomes less about searching, more about unfolding. And this doesn't mean you will never move. I still believe like human beings are like flowers, right? Sometimes when we grow, we have to be removed to a bigger pot. We have to be replanted. And so that's why when the relocation becomes powerful, we're not moving to a new place to escape or to seek something that we don't have within us. We're just moving to expand. We're moving to evolve. And so that's what happens when you create a sense of home in our body. You either feel at peace where you are, or life will naturally bring you to the next place that's aligned with who you're becoming.
I want to put that on like a little poster to put above my my laptop, my workstation. I love it. Those are very powerful realizations. Imagine somebody is preparing for a move and they haven't gone through all of these experiences that you have. What advice would you give them to prepare themselves emotionally before they make the move? What can they do before they even leave?
Yeah, so in my work, I also share this free ebook on my website. Anyone can download. Like anyone who move abroad will basically go through these 5 emotional phases, and it's really helpful for them to get to know this beforehand so they can prepare for each phase, right? So in summary, the first phase is the honeymoon phase. This may happen after moving abroad the first 3 months, or sometimes it happens before you move. You're really excited to explore new food, new restaurants, new museums. And then the second phase is the culture shock, like really getting yourself be prepared. You're gonna see a lot of differences. There could be language barrier, could be new habits, there might be different traditions. So that's the second phase where you will begin to feel the differences. You might feel a little bit awkward, frustrated. And the third phase is the low point, which means this can feel really lonely. A lot of people experience homesickness, grief, that they may want to give up. But if we really allow ourselves to process those emotions, we'll eventually move out of that phase, because the fourth phase will be the adaptation, like where we're learning new habits, we're trying to adapt, we may going through this identity shifts. But eventually after the 4 phases, we'll come to the last one, which is the integration and belonging. You will begin to experience a new sense of belonging, not because you have just built a new home in your new place, but because you have built home within yourself. And that's when relocation becomes really powerful. It becomes a catalyst for emotional freedom and spiritual awakening. Eventually, you'll realize you are gonna be okay no matter where you are in the world.
That sounds really helpful. There's a concept in psychology, and it's around primal world beliefs. So some people have the primal belief that the world is a exciting and enticing and interesting place. And other people have a primal world belief that the world is maybe a little scary, kind of dangerous, and those primal beliefs, and there's many, many layers of them, but those are the kind of the top layers. Those primal beliefs really shape the way we see the external world around us. And so someone who thinks the world is enticing and exciting will find the world, they'll find something to be curious about everywhere they go. Somebody who finds the world to be maybe scary and dangerous will see something to be concerned about wherever they go. And both of those types of people move. Are there psychological, emotional preparations people can do regardless of how they are oriented to see the world?
Yeah, I love that you brought up that concept because that's really aligned with my experience. I always feel like the external world is just a mirror, it's a hologram, it's a reflection of our inner state. And this is also my experience because the first time I visited New York was 7 years ago. I came here for a business trip. At that time, I felt, no, 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 this is not my city. That feels really intense, so much busyness. It made me really feel really anxious and stressful. And then 3 years ago, I came back again. I feel like this is a completely new space. Like I feel the energy is vibrant. People are really open. There is a welcoming energy here. But did New York really change? Maybe a little, but for the most part, I changed. That's why I feel the external world is a completely different space. And this is also the inner work I help my clients with doing. I really begin to shift your perspective, remove those emotional blocks that have been holding you back from being open to your new experiences. And again, once we begin to do this inner work, you'll begin to see your reality shift. If this place is truly not right for you, opportunities will show up. It will bring you to the next place that's more aligned with you. And if this place is truly right for you, you will begin to notice the shift in your body. You will begin to respond differently. So the question is always ask yourself, how do you actually feel when you arrive in this new place? Does your body feel open, nourished, resourced, or does your body feel tense or overwhelmed? So always pay attention to those sensations, those feelings. And once we work with those emotions, allow them to release, you will be able to discern, is this place truly right for you or not?
Wow, and that loops back to your comment earlier that, when you're at questions to ask about moving, is it the right place, but also is it the right time? Because maybe
Yeah.
7 years ago, it just wasn't the right time.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
interesting how that evolves. I also have a question I want to loop back to. Earlier, you mentioned there's 5 different types and 5 reasons that people relocate, and you talked about career and education, family, lifestyle, escape. What's the fifth one?
Yeah, I love that you brought that back because that's the secret sauce. The fifth one is the soul-led journey, which means you're moving not because of any external pressure. It's because you're answering this inner calling. You're moving to this place not because of there is a job waiting or a partner pushing or a problem forcing you. It's simply because deep down you know this place is right for you. Like I said earlier, ask those questions. When you arrive in this new place, you just feel like this is where I'm meant to be. This is where I feel I'm being resourced. I feel like there is growth for me, there is expansion for me. So that's what happens when you really allow yourself to like move through all these different layers. And all of the other types of relocation can be turned into a soul-led journey. For example, the career one, maybe initially you start with a career plan, you're looking for better opportunities, but maybe eventually you can turn that career ambition into your purpose, and that becomes your life purpose. Or second one, the relationship family move. Maybe it's teaching you to how to find a balance between loving yourself and meeting other people's needs, and eventually you can find that beautiful balance. And the third one, the lifestyle move, and because a lot of us we rely on our environment, especially as someone who is highly sensitive, I can pick this up. I need the environment that nourish me, but sometimes often we also need to build that inner stability so that we can find that long-lasting inner peace and fulfillment, because that's not gonna come from the external surroundings. It still have to start within you. And then the crisis move is teaching us to learn how to find our inner strength, our inner resilience as we're navigating through those unexpected changes. So all of these relocations can become a catalyst for growth and can lead you to that soul-led journey eventually.
That's so encouraging and beautiful to hear. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. We often ask our guests if they had one phrase or teaching or quote that summarizes how they feel about relocation and their inner journey. What would that be? Do you have anything like that that summarizes the journey?
I feel it's always coming back to the concept of home because that's how I started with my journey, trying to find home in external places until eventually learned to come home to myself. So that is also the name of my business, the name of my website, coming home to yourself. Like no matter where you are in the world, that's always your first priority. And when you come home to yourself, you will begin to find peace and feel at home no matter where life is taking you.
Beautiful. As we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to share with our listeners that I haven't asked you or that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, because I know a lot of people are feeling different types of emotions as they're relocating to a new place. And a lot of people ask me, like, how do I move through those emotions so that I can come back to a place of being grounded, being comfortable. So I always invite people to do one of these two things. The first thing is connect to yourself, connect to your heart, connect to your body, connect to your inner child, the parts of you that desires your love, desires your attention, and just being mindful of your emotions. And the second thing is connect to source and knowing that no matter where you are in this world, you're being guided by something more powerful, something beyond human being. And that is the guiding force. And that can really help feel more supported, more grounded, no matter where you are in the world.
That's wonderful. Tracy, talking to you today has made my day better.
I feel
So
the same.
thank you for that. You just have a wonderful view of the world, and congratulations on the growth and the journey that you've taken through these moves and how you're now bringing your learnings to your clients. I love that. It's a gift you're giving to the world.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kathy. I'm glad we met each other on this journey and shared this beautiful connection. And thank you for holding space.
Oh, thank you.
Wow, so much to think about. Take the illusion of a fresh start, for instance. When something is not right in our lives, we may not escape it simply by moving to a different place. We have heard the idea that we bring the weather, or that wherever we go, there we are. Tracy uses such gentle language around it, yet she goes straight to the core of the issue when she points out how relocation cannot fix an inner problem and how it actually magnifies it. That shows how misplaced our expectations can be that we can escape the harder parts of our lives by moving away from them. They travel with us.
Yes, and until we realize that and begin to work on ourselves, that's the inner work that Tracy speaks to and which she helps her clients with, we may find ourselves a bit stuck in our new home. Another powerful part of the conversation had to do with the two types of grief that Tracy names. One being the grief that we experience for what we choose to let go of when we move, the familiar people, the places, and a version of ourselves. But there's another type of grief for the things that we had imagined or perhaps expected and which never materialized. I appreciated Tracy's thought that naming these emotions of grief and sadness can actually soften them.
It brings back the thought from one of our earlier conversations about how a very big change can easily become too much. We may be keen on switching from a busy corporate job to painting in solitude, and moving from a busy city to a quiet village, and from eating out a lot to starting our own vegetable garden. But that may easily mean a sudden loss of identity and social connections and the ability to navigate our surroundings, especially if it involves a language barrier. When everything changes all at once, we're almost certain to feel overwhelmed, maybe isolated, maybe helpless. This is where treading gently can help reduce the complexity of the move. If you have lived in a big city all your life, try a smaller city before moving on to a farm. Try painting first, see if it's for you before you quit your job. And if you can, start learning the new language before you move.
When we first arrive in a new place, it's easy to get caught up in exploring and in the tasks associated with moving and getting set up in a new city or country. That busyness may distract us for a while, but slowly an unsettling realization may dawn that we're no longer the person we were before, and we don't quite recognize ourselves. Tracy addressed that. I certainly understand what she was talking about that in-between space of giving up your old identity and not yet being sure of where your new identity may take you.
And then there's the notion of somatic cues. how our felt sense can be as much of a guide through the big change as our rational thinking and preparation can. I'm certainly someone who's been labeled as an overthinker on occasion, so the idea of listening to my body invites a very different kind of exploration and attentiveness. I appreciated Tracy's invitation to get curious about what the body is telling us at the start of the day. Not to fix anything, yet to be aware and to learn to pay attention to how we feel. When I think about it, there certainly have been moments when I pressed on with something without much joy, when my body was silently saying, not yet. So I do want to get more curious about my inner state.
Mm-hmm. In the new year, we're planning to pay closer attention to the notion of home and belonging that a number of our guests have spoken about. Tracy's own view on these has evolved across her moves, with home becoming more of a peace and connection rather than a specific place. There is so much to think about here. Thank you for joining us today.
And do reach out when you're ready to share your story to help us expand this exploration of how